Working with children, working with students, working with my daughter, I am so much more keenly aware of the suffering of children of that age. I know that I love jazz. I know that I love chords. I love hip hop and soul. I know how to write music. I know how to make it feel a certain way. What has changed is the intention behind it. I no longer can write a mindless love song because all I want to write about is the dissolution of Israel and the United States. I can't stand the thought of Vanessa having to live through more of the same lies we've been fed.
Welcome to the Rhythm of Rebellion, where we speak with performing artists using their craft to bring justice, healing, and transformation into our world. I'm your host, Taína Asili, a singer and interdisciplinary artist creating at the intersection of love and liberation for more than 30 years. Today's guest is the profoundly talented Antonio Truyols, a brilliant pianist, composer, and educator of Peruvian, Spanish, and Puerto Rican descent. Trained in both jazz and classical traditions, Antonio's music weaves together sounds from Latin jazz and folkloric rhythms to hip-hop and beyond. He's toured internationally, worked with artists like Wynton, Marsalis, and Paquito de Rivera, and composes music that is as emotionally rich as it is politically urgent. I first discovered his work through the joyful viral reels he makes with his daughter, Vanessa Imani. But it was his song, Rise Up, centered on Palestine, that showed me the full power of his voice as a musician for liberation. And that is even more clear in his new album, Let It Be a Tale, the Palestine Quartet. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. And if this episode moves you, I invite you to like, subscribe, and share so we can uplift these powerful voices. Now let's dive into the conversation. Antonio, thank you so much for being here with us today on the Rhythm of Rebellion. I am so grateful to have you on this podcast. I just want to say before we even get into the questions that I'm so grateful for the depth and beauty and courage of your work. Particularly love the way that you embrace joy, family, vulnerability, strength. And so I'm just super excited to dive into this conversation with you.
Wonderful. Okay. Good. Well, I'm so happy to be here. You have the honor of this is my absolute first podcast ever in my life.
I'm so honored and proud.
I'm honored to be here. I'm a little nervous, even though I'm used to talking to people and talking about my music, but I'm so happy you found me.
I was curious about your earlier musical journey and how your upbringing, your cultural influences and inspirations, how they shaped the kind of music that you create today.
I was born and raised in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. My Latina heritage is Spanish, Peruvian, and Puerto Rican. My mother was Spanish and Puerto Riqueño, y my dad is Peruano. And I'm like mixing in and out of English and Spanish porque I only speak Spanish to my daughter. And sometimes when I start talking about my people, I mix and match.
Yeah.
But my mother is still a wonderful amateur musician. She sings, and when growing up, she was in blues bands in her job. She's a microbiologist by profession, but I was surrounded by music, and because of both of my parents, they divorced very young. But I had two very different pillars of music that I stand upon. So from the Spanish and Puerto Rican side, we would always be listening to like villancicos and música navideña de Puerto Rico, things like that, El Gran Combo, and all the classics that anybody from Puerto Rico knows.
Yes.
Not that I'm any kind of expert, but all the salsa and the bomba and the plena and that sort of stuff, and all the energy and culture that comes with it. The parties, the loudness, the coquito, the lechon, all of that stuff
The
was
huepa.
there. But also the huepas, exacto, the dancing, all the merengue, all of it. And then she was also Spanish, so I danced flamenco as a young kid too, and I played cajon, and I got into flamenco. So I had this Spanish thing, and she was the one who really who very, very much encouraged my musical journey as a young kid. She was the one who got me into music lessons, and and so I owe my piano lessons to her. You know, the piano was the main thing. I played saxophone too. She played saxophone in high school and ended up giving me my first saxophone was her actual alto saxophone that she used in high school. So I played saxophone all the way through college. So that's one half of that thing. And on the other side, my dad from Peru, he played in folkloric bands. Now he's perhaps let's say less seasoned of a musician, but he played percussion and he loved all this stuff. He had the zampoña, the panpipes, and the quenas, and all these folkloric things. And he actually got me into Peruvian folk dancing too. He would take me to his little gigs that he would have, or people's basements, little parties and whatnot. And he'd always have his bombo, this giant drum like this out of llama skin, things like that. And he got me into the Peruvian Marinera Norteña, which is a couples dance. And I actually became a competitive dancer through my middle and high school years. I won 2 national titles as a dancer of the Marinera Norteña.
Wow.
And I danced other types of folk dances like the tondero and la selva and different things like that. So I had this Peruvian thing. I had this Spanish thing going on. I had this Puerto Rican thing going on. And I fell in love with jazz as an 11-year-old. And that's still my number one impetus. I mean, when music wasn't exciting to me until I got to jazz. I had a wonderful jazz teacher in I guess I was 11 or so. And when I saw that, I was hooked. All I wanted to be was a jazz pianist. And that was, for a lot of I wanted to be a jazz pianist. That was my thing. And so all of that mixed together, so then when you talk about salsa and jazz, Afro-Peruvian jazz, Spanish jazz, Chano Dominguez, things like that. So all of these different fusions, like Calle 54, that movie and album from 2000, 2001 or so, was my obsession. And my first studio album, which happened when I was in college, there's a lot of songs, I'll be fully honest, were complete sort of like rip-offs of stuff that I was just obsessed with. You know, you can see these parallels between like I from like, I'm going to do a Latin, a flamenco jazz thing. I want to do that thing. I'm going to and I was just taking all these things in that I was hearing from my family, from what I was exploring. And that's how I became a musician. A Latino musician, that's a big part of my identity, pianist. Singing came later. You know, I always sung a little bit, but I didn't call myself a singer till I was in my mid-20s or something.
Which is amazing because you have such a beautiful voice. Like
Thank you.
I was searching on your videos and just loved hearing your voice. There were some sessions that you did during the pandemic with the full band, and I got to really hear you dig into your voice. It was so beautiful. It's always amazing to me how people get into the instrument when, you know, the voice is our first instrument often, right?
Right. Even as a teacher now that's my philosophy. I teach general music and I'm like, I tell the kids, the singing is it's one of the most human things you can do. Yeah. And it's been robbed of us through these artificial anxieties and things that colonization and capitalism has put upon us.
Oh, it's so true.
We think we can't sing because we're not good. Who said you can't sing just because you sound bad?
Right.
First of all, who says sound good, sound bad is a thing?
Word.
That's just for selling things.
Word. You know? My voice teacher, who was, now that I'm like linking everything together, and as you're talking, by the way, I am linking my own story in with yours. I'm like, this is so amazing how many intersections. My first vocal teacher was a Peruvian opera singer, Alma Mora.
Hey.
She was amazing. And she would teach me that, you know, even in speaking, we're singing, right? We have tone, we have rhythm, right? Different languages have their own song. So, you know, really the so-called singing voice is really just an extension of the song that you and I are giving to each other right now.
There was one thing that a big piece of my puzzle that I forgot to mention is the reason I used the name Antonio Truyols. That's actually not my legal name. It's a stage name. Is on the Spanish side of my family, my great-grandfather was named Antonio Truyols, who's my mother's grandfather. And he was an opera singer in Civil War Spain before Franco came to power. And he was a very well-known baritone from Mallorca. And then when the Civil War came, it sort of ended his career. He still did some films in his later afterwards, but it ended his singing career. And he's the only professional musician in my family that I know of, if I don't go too far back. So it's because of that I use that name as well, wow. Antonio Truyols.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So I can't forget that
piece,
because that's the name. That's the centerpiece of my,
And this is something new I'm discovering about you, is this Spanish lineage and your study of flamenco, because Gaetano and I, Gaetano is my spouse, we went and lived in Spain for a period of time and studied flamenco. As I studied flamenco vocals, Gaetano
in Sevilla.
Sí. Flamenco vocals, and Gaetano studied guitar. And wow. My father was a Afro-Latin jazz conductor. So, we have all these, wow. I rarely get to meet folks that kind of intersect all these different pieces. So wow. It's so beautiful to kind of hear how those influences have informed what you create today. And, in a very different sound, what I create. And yet both of them are carrying these powerful messages. And I want to get to that in a little bit. But the piece that I was curious about also was, you said that you grew up in a musical home. I grew up in a musical home. And now you have cultivated this beautiful musical home, right? So you make music with your wife, and you also make music with your daughter. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that. What is it like to make music with your wife, to hold this shared partnership, not only in life, but in music and in vision? And also, what is bringing in your daughter into this musical culture? What is that like for you? How has that informed who you are and the work that you do today?
So let me start with my wife, because she came first.
Yes.
My wife, Gizem Yücel, is a Turkish violist, and she came to the country in her early 20s. She's very much Turkish in that sense. She was raised in Turkey and a wonderful classical musician. And we met at music school, University of North Carolina, Greensboro. I think it was inevitable that I would end up with a musician. I always knew that, not only subconsciously, sort of consciously. As a young guy in college, I was like, okay, who are the musicians I can date? I just knew I was going to end up with a musician. And I was so lucky to end up with her. She was a doctorate student when I was an undergraduate. So I was reaching. And I wrote a lot of music to convince her to be my wife. Some of those music, The Joy You Bring, if you happen to have heard that tune, which was part of the Remote Big Band.
I did.
That song. And there are many love songs that I wrote for her in my younger years. But it is not only a beautiful thing to share music with your life partner, but it was intentional, I have to say, and I couldn't have been luckier to find such a wonderful person, such an empathetic person, and also I have to give her complete credit for so much of my awakening to the capitalist system, and also for the family that we currently have. I'll say more. So my wife has always been a very empathetic person. She's a highly sensitive person, and she was the one, who introduced me to, look at, making me take climate change more seriously. And not that I wasn't aware of it. I grew up with liberal parents, vote blue kind of parents.
Yeah.
And so I was aware of this. We hated on Bush during the Bush years. We liked Al Gore. We went to folk festivals and listened to NPR. Those people brought, so I got it. But my wife pointed out, brought so much to my attention things about the trash-free culture. We were trash-free for a number of years. She brought veganism and things like that, or we discovered together kind of the horrors of the meat industry and things like that. So little by little over these years, as we're growing, so much. It was the beginning of this path leading to where I am now. And she also wanted to foster since she was a child. Since she was a child, she wanted to foster, and she was absolutely the impetus for us to decide to foster and then later adopt our daughter Vanessa. which is its own other thing. I mean, my gosh. I mean, I knew from the beginning I was going to be the parent who just saturated my daughter with music, grown-up music. But I never really, I don't know if I never fully dreamed. I didn't really picture exactly what it would look like, but my daughter's really a musical and lovely person. I was inundating her with grown-up music. So when she was days old, we were her foster parents first, and then when reunification was not possible with the birth person, we adopted her. We are against the adoption industry. And so I think many people, we get certain questions online about, where Vanessa's from. She's from Queens because we didn't seek to adopt. We sought to foster, and we fostered, and then we were already licensed to be adoptive parents, and it's the least traumatic to keep the child where they are. So that's how we ended up being her parents. But it was Gizam's desire to foster that led to this at all, and is sort of the reason for our family, to be quite honest. But when she was days old, she came to our house.
Wow, she was that young.
8 days old. She was
Wow.
8 days old. And I inundated her with grown-up music. First thing I did was we listened to Love Supreme by John Coltrane.
That was
in its entirety.
my son's first album. Literally,
No way.
right after I gave birth to him, I had to go to the hospital, and his dad played a Love Supreme for my son, who is also now a jazz aficionado. Played sax, and
Come on.
yeah. Look at this.
Yeah.
I love it, and that was a good one. See, it influences. It runs deep. That album.
Yeah, and she was listening to everything. I mean, I'm talking about Scriabin piano sonatas, Mahler symphonies in their entirety, Milton Babbitt, Afro-Peruvian, Peru Negro. Like, I didn't care what cuss words were in things. I didn't care how long things were. She was not going to be listening to Twinkle Little Star. It was nonstop grown-up music, and then me playing at the piano. So she practiced in my arms, especially when she was young, I would be playing and having her in my arms. So she got really high information music. Kapustin. I was practicing Kapustin, and I started learning Kapustin just for her, which is really complex and nerdy piano music, because I wanted to open these neurons. And then, about when she was 3 years old, she started improvising kind of out of the blue, really. She sang along with things, but in the fall of 24 is when she started improvising these like complete songs with lyrics, and it was whoa. I had to post one, and that went viral, and she became this viral sensation, and we did local and national news. We went to the Jennifer Hudson show, and this thing blew up, and then every week I'm posting it because she just kept producing. She's so, what's that word?
Prolific
Yes. Of a composer.
Yes.
I mean, nobody puts out work like Vanessa Imani. I'm talking about so much. I can't even reach it. I have folders of stuff that I haven't even fully listened to that have all sorts of gems, melodic gems, lyric gems, and I only can post one a week just because I can't keep up with it. But having this home where I can share music with my wife and share a shared vision for the world, more importantly, and having my daughter who's growing up in this, and just recently she improvised a song and mentioned Martin Luther King and Patrice Lumumba back here of the first democratically elected leader of Congo.
So
and I'm
amazing,
like, come on,
and she knows.
That's my girl.
As a
In the same sentence.
lyricist, I really appreciate when you write, you use the captions to say what she's saying, because, sometimes when they're little, we miss what they're trying to say. But as a lyricist, I'm reading these words, and they are profound. Like there are times where it's like very emotive, maybe the word doesn't quite make sense to me, but there's like such an emotion coming out of that word. And then there's also just concepts that are hard to believe that someone so little is grasping, but it just shows how much lives in these young bodies, these young minds, these young spirits, when we allow them to have the opportunity to emerge authentically.
Absolutely. And a lot of times I don't hear always what she's saying in the moment. It's only afterwards, as I'm editing the videos and the lyrics, that I realize, did she really say that? It's incredible.
It's so beautiful.
One of my favorite lines is, Empty daybreak is hidden and unusual. I love that.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Antonio, how has making music with your daughter and just being a parent in general, how has that influenced your musical journey and where you are today?
Being a parent and being a teacher, because I make music with most of my days. I'm making music with children or teaching children music, my own daughter and my own students. I guess working with children, working with students, working with my daughter has maybe not so much in a technical and theoretical sense influenced my music, in that I'm choosing different chords or writing lyrics that are different now that I have deeper emotions about the world. It's more that because I am constantly engaged with children and I see them on a daily basis from age pre-K to 8th grade, that I am so much more keenly aware of the suffering of children of that age. And so I've been very intentional about what I like my music to sound like. I know that I love jazz. I know that I love chords like that. I love the crunch. I love hip hop and soul. I love, certain grooves. So I know what it sounds like, and I know how to write music. I know how to make it feel a certain way. What has changed is the intention behind it more than anything else. If my second and third album, which are 2 jazz albums, are not so sonically different, but they are so much deeper in meaning, and I think that's been the biggest thing. When you're around children, and every time I see some awful, things on my screen of children dying in the most horrible ways, I see precisely faces that I see every day. And I think that's why I no longer can write a mindless love song. I don't have the ability in me anymore to write a summer jam. I never did. But at least before, I was able to write, all I know how to write was happy songs.
Yeah.
All my music was happy and love and feel good. Now I feel like I've lost that ability, because all I want to write about is the dissolution of Israel and the United States. I just anything that I can be a part of outliving us, that would be, these entities, that's all I want to do with my life, because I can't stand the thought of Vanessa having to live through more of the same stuff that all of us have been, all these lies we've been fed.
Yeah. I can really relate to this feeling of parenthood allowing us to deepen our compassion, to awaken us to, the needs, of other children, to protect other children. The first song that I wrote about Palestine was from the perspective of a mother. And it was in 2000, I think it was 2008 or 2009, after the Gaza massacre. And I was in Puerto Rico, and I had a friend who had been reporting about what was happening and describing these sonic booms and mothers holding their babies in the midst of sonic booms. And I can tell you right now, like, I feel it in my throat still, as I think about what that experience must be like, as somebody who had a child, asleep in my arms, what it might be like to live through that. So I wrote from that experience, and it continues to be, something that I think about often as I'm songwriting. You describe your new album, Let It Be a Tale, the Palestine Quartet, as a jazz and hip hop album of resistance and hope, inspired by the story, strength, and joy of Palestinians through ongoing Israeli-U.S. genocide and 78 years of land theft, apartheid, and colonization. This is such a bold statement, such a powerful artistic statement. And I would love to hear you talk more about how this work came together and what stories or truths you felt most called to uplift through this album?
Yeah, man, anytime I talk about Palestine, whether it's through my work or in and of itself, I get so emotional, man. It's
hard not
so
to.
tough to yeah, right. Even after even those of us who have been fighting since the beginning, and we're like, we've sort of made peace, and at least we have to move on. Even then, anyways, that's just a preface, because I don't know where I'm gonna go. I discovered Palestine in October of 2023. I did not know much. I almost knew absolutely nothing. I don't even know if I knew the word Palestine. I don't really know. I must have heard it maybe, but I had no consciousness of what was going on over there, what this country Israel was. So before there was any artwork, I was just experiencing the genocide. Both my wife and I were just watching it, and we were glued to it. We were just consuming it, which just got worse and worse and worse, as you know. And then it was sort of a lucky break. A friend of mine who had recorded my second album, Chocolate Sketches, which is the music of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, very lighter subject, was he had a studio date open. He said, I got a day at this really wonderful studio. Would you want to come in and record some stuff, because I need jazz for my portfolio? It was sort of it was a luck. And I said, yes. And I was like, yes, I have these ideas. I had been writing these rap songs that are part of the album already. I'd been writing them little verse by verse and posting them on social media. I made sure to put the first music video that I made of Inhuman was the first thing that I actually wrote on this album. I put all of the gory images in the video. I wanted the video to be shocking, because I couldn't believe that people are seeing what I'm seeing and are as inactive and complicit as they are. I still held on to some kind of belief in the fall of 23 that people must not be seeing what I'm seeing. So I started writing this music, and this was some of the hardest stuff. I would download anything and everything that was gory. Anything that I saw, for every time I saw a leg open, guts on the floor, I'm like, download. And I made this folder, and I had to go through things, intentionally trying to find things that matched my lyrics. And that was incredibly hard to do. So I have this I have this folder still of stuff, but I wanted to put these images in the video because I was so angry that I wanted to shove it in front of people's faces. So it started with these raps, and then nothing happened. It continued on and on. I kept thinking to myself, how long can this go on, right? And man, wow, hold my beer, they said. So that was where it started, in this place. And then in the studio, when the studio thing came and fell in my lap, the studio time, I said, all right, I got to make a Palestine album. I got to do it. And I was so pissed specifically, and still am, with the jazz musicians, with the jazz industry, because man, I'm going off on a tangent now, but shame on jazz musicians who perform at the high levels of jazz, going around the world, sharing this music born of oppression, and say nothing. I've seen nothing from jazz at Lincoln Center. All these top jazz people who I've never been able to attain that sort of, success, fame, whatever you want to call it. I don't really want to call it success, but people who are actually touring the world doing jazz, concerts. That's not me. Who have said nothing about it. How dare you use this music of oppression and take Zionist donations, I'm sure. So that to me is a huge spit in the face and bastardization of the jazz art form, especially when all of us learn about how jazz was used in the civil rights movement. Fables of Faubus by Charles Mingus,
Yes.
Strange Fruit,
Yes.
Billie Holiday.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, there's even a Palestine. The name is not coming to me at the moment, but there was an album written by an Arab Arab American.
I'm thinking of the same. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't think of it too.
Which I only learned about later
Same.
in life.
I only learned it really
that didn't
recently.
come to my jazz education.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to make this jazz album. I am going to be that dude. And at the time it was really new-ish, right? March of 25. And so I started writing, and I knew about Renat Atala. So the reason that sentence that you read about the album came much later, because I had no hope and I had no joy. But I was writing, the centerpiece of the album is this song called It's Bisan, I'm Still Alive, written for the journalist Bisan Oda. And that one, I was trying to create war and chaos. So I have, everything was really bombastic, and you never get to hear a full two choruses back to back because it's interrupted by this bombastic section that has this, all this like dissonance and weirdness and just I told the drummer to just go crazy and just forget about who's soloing and destroy everything on the drum set. I wrote something for Renat Atala, who's this lovely young lady who was in Gaza and recently was able to get out and is in the Netherlands, I believe, with her sister. She did cooking videos, so I had to write something joyful for her. That song is called Renat's Joy. Renat's Joy, because I had heard at some point, there's so many things that I've heard over the years over such wonderful thinkers and activists of, Palestinians are more than their suffering.
Yes.
We only see them in the form of suffering, but we have to recognize their joy and resilience. So that's what led me to write that song. So I was just writing stuff, taking maybe some segments of things I had that weren't finished, and like, man, that would be good for this. And I put together real fast this album. It came very quickly. We recorded with Fernando Garcia on drums, Teresa Sanchez on bass, and Chris Bittner on tenor saxophone. And we went in, we recorded it in a single day. And then it was this big process of mixing and mastering remotely. I was not there in the studio for that part, but it took me a while to get everything together. We had photographs done by Khalud Eid, who's a Palestinian photographer, who also photographed the first time we performed the concert in June. We performed the concert in June, way before the album was released, because I just had to get the music out. I needed people to hear it because it was like June of 25. It was another hump of violence. I told people at the audience, it's like, this is an album release concert way before the album comes out because of what's going on. But that's where that came. And I had to put the rap and the jazz because I had more rap. I had more stuff to say. That rap tune actually came in the summer of 2012, the second rap track, which was Rise Up, because I just needed more say after the first rap track and putting all those gory videos for everyone to see, and nothing happened. And then I was upset and I had more to say. And the second one was even a little bit more angry. The two rap tracks are very angry.
Yeah.
And because I was. And then at the end of the day, I'm just so happy how it all came together, because jazz and rap are both genres of oppression.
Right.
So they seemed like the perfect avenue or the perfect medium to fight for Palestine.
Yes. Yes.
That's how the album came to be.
Listening to your album, I would say probably my favorite track was the one that you did for Bisan. Having watched all of her videos throughout this time period, I felt I could access the emotion that I would feel and still do feel when I watch her videos, and also the journey of her experience, like at the towards the beginning where she's at now, what's being transmitted in terms of information and her experience and her emotions. I felt like you really captured that journey in that song. So I'm really, now I'm getting really emotional, but I'm really grateful for the way that you did that.
Thank you. I have to mention Refat, because I forgot, I mentioned Bisan, I mentioned Renat, but the title track, Let It Be a Tale, came from the Palestinian, he was a translator, an educator, and poet. He wrote a wonderful poem called If I Must Die. And the final line of the poem is Let It Be a Tale. And it's this beautiful, heartbreaking poem that you should find. And I can never read it out loud without crying. Every time I read it in the shows, and I always break down in the shows. I can't. But it's a beautiful thing, and it does. If I must die, let it be a tale. If you had to summarize the poem into 2 sentences, that's what it is. And it was just such a beautiful sentiment. That's why I had to write a tune for him, and it just felt like such what poetic words. And that had to be the title of the album, because what came later was we have to make some kind of hope, because these forces, these imperial forces, are counting on us to give up and be hopeless. And when I realized that, that's what sort of gave me more hope, because like they want me to be angry and violent, but I had to make something out of it. And that sentence, or that phrase, "let it be a tale," felt so hopeful in a poetic way, at the same time honoring the death. And I even considered getting it tattooed on me in Arabic. And then I found out from my friend that it was actually written in English.
Oh,
I did not realize that until later. I had assumed that he wrote this poem in Arabic, and I found this website that had it translated to all the languages in the world. But he wrote it in English. And then a friend of mine, Leila Mokhaiber, who's been working for UNRWA for the last 10, 15 years or something like that. She told to me that it was intentional. It was this act of resistance. She had a chance to meet him before he died, actually, along with some other wonderful people in Gaza. And it's an act of resistance writing that in English to share with the English speaking world, and to point out our humanity so that it's more tangible to the Western world. Mm-hmm. So that all of that was beautiful, that I learned after writing the piece and after the music.
Right. Thinking about poetry, thinking about lyrics, you do have some songs that do have poignant lyrics woven into them, particularly the hip hop. But then the majority of the album are these beautiful instrumental pieces that carry so much rich meaning, right, in them. And I was curious if you could tell us a little bit about your approach to telling these stories.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a jazz musician through and through. So it's a jazz album, with even the rap tracks have,
Yeah, they do.
Jazz comping in there. I'm a jazz musician. I can't not sound jazz. And so one of the tunes on there, I can speak a little bit about some cool things that I put in there that are social commentary that people might not recognize. One was in the song Media Circus. Media Circus is a blues, and so I wanted to have a blues in the album, because I love the blues, and it's also this other genre born of oppression within the jazz. Jazz is a genre, but jazz is also a form within jazz. And typically in jazz, if you don't know, we take turns soloing, and we have these choruses. And then a blues form is typically 12 bars, and every 12 measures, the soloist either continues on to another chorus, or at some point when they're done saying what they've got to say, they stop playing and the next soloist comes over. So I had this idea that what if the next soloist were to take parts of somebody else's solo? So instead of just stopping at the 12 measure mark, the next soloist would solo for 2 measures of that person's chorus, and then the original person would finish the final 10. Then the next time around, they would take 4 measures, and there would be 8 left. And then 6 measures, and then there's 6 left. And then 8 measures, and then there's 4 left. And then 10 measures, and there's 2 left. And then finally, the next soloist is going, as a metaphor for colonization of taking land little by little. And I have to give credit to Teresa Sanchez, my bass player and good friend. She came up with the idea of calling it the colonizer handoff. Because in jazz circles, that is not a very typical thing to hear. We're used to trading 4s. That's a very common practice. So we're used to hearing somebody solo for 4 or for 8 measures even. But this is something I've never heard. So if a jazz musician hears this, even somebody who's very familiar with jazz, at first is likely to be confused as to why did he just start soloing for 2 measures and then got out of the way. But the idea is this metaphor for taking and taking. And the fact that it's in the song Media Circus, poking fun at our media system, which has not just complicit, has been completely aiding and abetting this genocide and land theft. So that's one thing that went through that. I already mentioned in the Bisan song, creating the chaos, the melodies that I write. Is very disorienting, and these chords I wanted to make I wanted to make you feel uncomfortable. So yeah, that disorientation. And the other thing of not that bombastic thing interrupting the solos was intentional because it's as if they cannot live their lives. Every time they try to live their lives or fish something, there's more bombing, there's more killing, there's more death. And then they have to go back and try to plant something, try to scound something, and then more death and more bombing. So the song is reflecting that. And the fact that we wrote no ending to the tune, and I decided we're just going to dissolve. We're just going to fall apart. So the entire ending of the track, once we get to that ending point, we sort of just listen to each other. We're creating sounds of war and chaos and discombobulation and we just fizzle out and disappear. And every time we perform it, it's different.
So speaking of performance, you had an album release, right? And I was curious about, there's recording, right? So we got to get a window into your recording process, but then there's also performing these songs that are carrying really deep stories. And I was curious about your process of centering and holding these memories, these stories as you play live.
It's very hard for me to perform this show. I've only ever performed it twice. I applied for a festival in the fall. We'll see. I'd love to do it more. But it's very hard to perform because I remember every bit of creating it, and it was so deprived of ego, right? It wasn't about this is going to sound good. It was, everything, every line, I was like thinking of death. I see death, and I don't want to focus on that too much, but I'm so traumatized and full of anger, grief, and death in my head, in my body, in my soul. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so bitter, because so much of the joys that we should be enjoying. I'm privileged to live a comfortable life, but even then, it's so hard to enjoy my joy. Completely, because I'm always, even in moments of joy, often reminded of what they don't have. So like even in the second, I think I made some lyrical blunder. I was taken aback. I was performing it, and the first line, curtains up, round two, I got more to say. I just saw another fucking beheaded baby. And I think I was so like shocked by my own words that I had to stop rapping for a second and then pick up on another line. So like it's still very newish just because I haven't had a lot of performance experience with it, but it is very hard to perform. Many times throughout the show, whether I'm both playing piano and rapping, where I hit a moment and I'm taken out of performance. And I have to sort of like, okay, you're on a show, man. You're on a show. Play. What's the next focus? Not right now. Not right now. So it is very difficult to do that. Another thing that's been going on is as my daughter exploded on social media, and I have a Palestinian flag in every one of my posts. It just sits in my house. Many Palestinians who are desperate, reasonably so, are reaching out to me a lot. And people have gotten a hold of my phone number too. So I get WhatsApp messages, not only messages on social media, but I get lots of messages. And what's been heartbreaking for me and so difficult for me to do is there are times that I just have to block because I can't live with my phone constantly going, which breaks my heart even more. I can't even live with that, even though I know that I'm giving in other ways. I'm giving to El Nanlak, it's better to give to these organizations that are helping rather than to individuals. But that doesn't change the fact that they still blow up my phone. And I mean, even as we were beginning to this interview, I had to do such a thing. And every time it happens, it kills me. So there are these two families, though, that I early on I connected with, who I've been giving money to directly, and just because I've video chatted with them and verified them, and I've had some connection. And now it's been a few years. I know their kids' names, their kids' pictures sit in our home. So I brought them up in June, to share with them. They shared a video. They made a video for me to play at the concert. And I'd like to continue that tradition because I also think it's nice for people who may not have been expecting to see actual people in Gaza, or maybe if you're at a festival, for example, to appear at a show and then to actually be forced to look into the eyes of a child who's speaking directly to you. It's a difficult program to perform, not to mention it's technically difficult. Even if you take all the emotion and meaning out, like as a pianist, man, it's hard. All the it's a tough tune. I write tough music.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to do physically. And then on top of that, it's hard to keep yourself in check.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. In a more recent years, I've been developing a show where I'm now doing a little bit of, I don't even know if I can do this on camera, like a little this with choreography and vocal performance and, band direction. And then more recently, even I went on a pilgrimage. So I would walk every day, like 15 to 20 miles, and then have to do all of these things. So,
oh my goodness.
But for me, I find I completely understand what it's like to be. It's almost painful to perform these stories. I feel that way with the song that I wrote for Palestine Strong Tree. Like vocally, it's a big range, so it's also tricky for me vocally. Yeah. Oftentimes, I will sing it on a street at a protest or demonstration where I'm singing it into like some sort of megaphone or. So it's not always like the best to even capture the vocals, but. Emotionally, it's raw. And and at the same time, I think it's really important for me to sing, when I can, both for the impact for others, but also for myself. I think it's really important to alchemize that grief. And music is a really important tool to alchemize that grief, because if it lives within us unmoved, unchanged, it becomes cancerous and it helps no one. It helps no one. So for me, moving that through the music, as hard as it may be, as vulnerable as it may be, I think it's really important so that we can alchemize that into something that can actually move us into action, that can move us into taking another step and another step, walking that hope into existence, just like our ancestors did, right? Our Puerto Rican ancestors, your Peruvian ancestors. There is always examples of the ways that human beings have used art in this way, as a reclamation of humanity, and also as a way to alchemize grief, pain, and then transform that into hope.
And for me, there's that lineage of having Puerto Rican and Peruvian ancestry, both colonized people. And I'm constantly, now it's been re-brought up, the amount that was stolen from Latin America and what we could have been if European diseases hadn't killed a bunch of us, because it wasn't because of military genius that the Spanish colonizers, won the continent. It was really just disease and luck, a stroke of luck in this particular universe timeline. That now we're full of a country that, there's that this country that has such beautiful heritage, land and everything is ridden with more, capitalist cancerous spores, the latest being Venezuela right now, all these stories. So coming from colonized people and then being a part of this fight for Palestinian and Congolese and Sudanese liberation.
Yep.
It's all real. It's all connected.
Yep.
Like, I mean, we hear this thing, it becomes kind of a trope, but I see it so clearly. I feel like Neo in the Matrix. I see it now. Yeah. All I see is green and green stripes.
So what impact do you hope to make with this work?
The short and obvious answer is a world where people are not oppressed. A free Palestine, an end to apartheid and oppression everywhere. When I think about the literal things, I've always been such a, I mean, I'm an extrovert, and I enjoy performing and talking in front of people, but in many ways, as an artist, I'm not really an attention seeker. So I've been really bad. I've always been bad at promoting my albums. I'm the kind of artist who writes the thing, make the product so that there's a tangible finish to the idea, Forget about it, move on. And especially right now that my eyes are open, I don't even know how to go about in this modern music industry, how to promote, how people will listen to this album, because I have no faith in the music industry, really. I took my music off Spotify. This is not on Spotify. It's streaming in other places who are not so great to begin with. Not like Apple Music is great, but I just had to start with Spotify. So our music's not on Spotify. A very small handful of people have seen and heard this, and I don't know how to do it. I mean, in the past I've done the cold calling. I've emailed radio stations and things, and I've never gotten very far, and I've never had enough of the work ethic and the oomph to follow up and show up and network and be out there so that my album gets heard and gets into the labels. Like, I've just never, it's so foreign to me. This entire world order to me is meaningless. I feel like we're in the Truman Show and I'm just looking at cardboard boxes everywhere. So I don't even know how to do that. But my hope is that somehow, at least the right-minded people like yourself and the people you engage with, people who care about liberation, who, did not just wake up when ICE started killing people and sees these connections from earlier, that these people will see it and hear it, and it'll be a part of something in the jazz pantheon. And I hope jazz musicians hear this and see this and are moved to do something for themselves and change the way they're existing in the jazz sphere, because I really don't care about the next big concert at Carnegie Hall or jazz at Lincoln Center. If you haven't said anything, I don't care. I don't care what you have to say or what you've been doing or how good your music is.
It's
I'm
so
trying
real.
to
No,
navigate
you're
this
keeping
thing.
it real. You're keeping it real. And I appreciate that. One of the reasons why I make this podcast is, I've been doing social justice music for 30 years, and people would often ask me, like in interviews, like, where are the social justice musicians of today? Like, after, Bob Dylan and Pete Seeger, they think that like, all social justice music just like fell away. And, for me, this is my declaration of like, we are still here doing the damn thing, speaking the truth to power. And there are many of us across genres, across disciplines, across locations, using our art in service of social justice in so many different ways, whether that's doing what you're doing, which is like really using your art in a transformative way through jazz to, awaken people to what's happening in Palestine. And, for me, it's not, in the capitalist system will often make us think that impact is about numbers. Right? It's like, how many people did you reach? How many albums did you sell? For me, if one person hears my work and is impacted in some way, is inspired to take action in some way, that's a win. That's a win. That is a step forward for our liberation movements. And I can testify, Antonio, that you have your one person right here with me. And I am sure that there are many others who are now going to go after listening to this podcast and check out your work, which, by the way, for our listeners, if any of you have Bandcamp, I purchased my album on Bandcamp. You can go directly to Antonio's website, which is in the show notes, and you can purchase it right from their website. But I feel your work is about connecting with the emotions, and that helps us to stay fully human. So much of social media is about numbing, right? So much of this world is about numbing. And in that numbing, we become apathetic. We start to normalize the inhumanity. And so art, I think artists like you and I, particularly the work that you're doing here with this album, is really about reconnecting us to the emotion, and in so doing, our full humanity. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. And let's also be clear. We are being repressed. When people talk about where are these people? It's being actively kept from people.
That's right.
And that's I mean, I've heard it, but I've experienced it too in my posts. When Vanessa has a cute video that is, and maybe there happens to not be a Palestinian flag in that one because of the angle, does incredibly well. And then I do something that is, the music is excellent, but because of the words there, the disparities in numbers are too big to be an accident.
Yeah.
Letting your music exist alone, and that is enough, versus searching for likes and reach, I feel like is also its own act of resistance.
Absolutely.
Because I refuse to partake in the valuation of me. It is because it is right and it is good, not because I need to further my career or because it'll play better on social media trends or anything like that. I tell you what, as angry of a person as I am these days, I hope that people come connect with me. I've been so fascinated by your recent guests, and I'm so interested to meet them. I'm happy to learn that there are other people like me out there. Other musicians who are writing this type of music and for the right causes.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of that fabric that frees us all.
My last question for you is: you talked about the Neo Matrix awakening, as an artist that in more recent years started to kind of like see the letters and numbers on the screen. For other artists who are in that place too, like they're just starting to be like, oh, wait a second. And they're starting to see, is there any advice that you would give to these artists that are just starting to kind of realize how important it is to use our work in service of justice and liberation?
Try to connect with people in person. I think, and that's not so much of a musical advice. I just think that is where the future of the human race needs to go. Technology has separated us so much with the internet. And even not too long ago, I was of the place of, you can make some income from music and never having to do a show, whether it's teaching online or, focusing on my social media. That's how I honed my content creator craft, if you will. But because everything now is AI and you can't trust what a video looks like, what a sound is anymore, and these companies are just stealing your work to train AI, that we need to go backwards in time to a time where if you wanted to hear music, you have to go to a place or go to a jam session or have people over your house and music. And I'm not saying that from a place of experience, because I'm not the most active performer and never have been. But I think that's the way of the future. And I think there are people who are doing it so much better than me who have said, yeah, I don't really want to do social media. I want to hold shows in person. I want to connect with people in real life. And I think that's the future. That's the future of not only music, it's the future of the fight against oppression, because we are so monitored by everything. I think for many reasons, for our connection to each other as human beings, for our ability to make real music that is not full of ego and social media and likes, to make something in person that you can only really see in person. I would say explore with that, because you're also going to meet other human beings who are going to tell you different things, who are going to, maybe if you're from Sudan, maybe you're so focused on ICE and you're upset with what's going on in this Trump USA, but then you might go meet somebody who will open your eyes to what the history of Venezuela or Cuba, and it's like, wow, I didn't really get that. And I think that's what's going to make you a more full human being, not only because of knowledge, but your connection to other people. I think do things in person. Because when I was in college, it was so easy to just go to a practice room and make stuff. And that was actually some of the most joyful music making time of my life. And now in New York City, I lament, man, it's so hard to get together. It's so hard to do that. And I feel like that's on purpose. I'm almost certain that's on purpose.
That's so true.
So that's my advice to young people.
I think that's phenomenal advice. With that, Antonio, I hope that you and I get to connect in person and make some music soon.
Inshallah.
But
Ojalá, inshallah, inshallah, because my wife is Muslim. I say inshallah, and I love that there's the Spanish version, because they were in.
So may it be so. And until then, I'm grateful that we were able to be here connected today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Muchas gracias.
That brings us to another episode of The Rhythm of Rebellion. If you'd like to connect with Antonio, you can find all of his information in the show notes. And you can find my info there as well, or at liberation.music. You can also find information there about my Patreon, which helps bring my work for free or low cost to powerful grassroots community organizing. And if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts about the podcast. Until next time, peace, love, and liberation.